Hello, everybody. My name is Felicia Steinel, and I am with Western Governors University. Today, I want to talk about a simple idea that changed how our product teams use analytics. We stopped treating analytics like reporting, and we started treating it like a product. My role at WGU focuses on helping product teams make better decisions with data. I support more than 36 digital products and over 50 product managers, which means there's really a lot of complexity in how our decisions get made. I've been in product for about 10 years, and I've been using Pendo for about 5. Outside of work, I'm also a single mom of 2 incredible kids, which probably explains why I care so much about designing systems that create clarity instead of chaos. For anyone unfamiliar with WGU, we're a fully online university serving hundreds of thousands of students across the United States. Our product teams support digital experience across the entire learner journey, from enrollment and onboarding to learning platforms and support tools. Like many organizations, we have invested heavily in analytics, including dashboards, reports, and data pipelines. But as we were using all of these things, we kept running into the same frustrating question. Why do we have so much data, but decisions still feel so hard to make? To answer that question, we had to take a step back and look at what was actually happening inside of our organization. And what we found was surprisingly common. First, we assumed that the problem was really data availability. Maybe we just needed better dashboards, or maybe we needed more reporting. But the real issue wasn't data, it was actually finding alignment. So different teams had different definitions of success, and all of our dashboards had different data sets. Internally, our product reviews often turned into debates about metrics instead of conversations about the decisions that we were trying to make. Sometimes we would spend a lot of time in meetings discussing which success metric was correct before we could even talk about what we needed to do next. And even when the data existed, it could take up to weeks to make agreement on what it meant. And so we weren't short on data, we were really short on shared understanding. The second thing we realized was about product managers themselves. Product managers don't ignore data because they don't care about it. They ignore it because sometimes they're just really overwhelmed. They're balancing roadmaps, product launches, stakeholders, customer feedback, any engineering constraints, and sometimes the occasional fire drill that winds up on their desk that morning. Analytics often requires focused time and exploration, and that's exactly the type of time that our product managers at WGU just rarely ever had. So we didn't want to just produce more analytics. We really wanted to design analytics so it fits into how our product teams make decisions. So when we stepped back, we realized something important. We were actually building analytics like reporting and not like a product. We didn't have any defined users, we didn't have any adoption goals, and we lacked feedback loops for our analytics team. We were in a place where we were measuring our success by how many reports we were delivering. And that's an important thing to note, because producing reports doesn't necessarily mean that anybody is using them to make product decisions. So we had dashboards, we had data, we had reports, but the real question isn't, should we produce analytics? The real question should really be, did we make better decisions as a product organization? And those two things are not the same. We set a simple goal for our product analytics team. We wanted most of our organization to have access to meaningful insights, not just our analytics teams, or not just leadership, but the product teams themselves. So we set a target to support 80% of the organization with decision-making insights. In the first quarter alone, we hit 40% of our goal just by expanding Pendo instrumentation across more of our products. That alone started changing behavior, because once our product teams could see what was happening behind their products, they started asking better questions, and that is a shift that an organization of any size can make. Reaching that goal, though, really required a fundamental mindset shift. We had to start designing analytics the same way that we design products. So we started asking some of the same questions they all ask when you're designing valuable releases. We started asking, okay, who is this insight for? What decision does it support? And how will we know that it's helping? We, as an analytics team, we needed users, outcomes, and adoption goals, just like any other product capability. And this small change dramatically improved how we prioritized our product analytics work. This is the one question that really changed our conversations. I know it looks simple, but before we got a lot of requests saying, hey, can you pull this data for me? Sometimes they would ask, can you pull feature usage? Can you show me engagement trends? Or can you break this report down by segment? Those questions are all valid, but they're not decision-oriented. So we started working with our product teams to ask these questions differently. And we started asking, what decision are we trying to make? So instead of asking things like, hey, can you pull feature usage for us? We're now asking, are we deciding whether or not we want to invest more in this feature or depreciate it? And instead of asking, can you show me engagement trends? We're starting to ask, are we trying to understand if onboarding is working or maybe where our users are dropping off? And here's another question that we saw very frequently at WGU. A lot of product teams would come to us and say, hey, we're launching this new thing. Can you build a dashboard for us? Just that, no details. Just, can you build a dashboard for us? And now we're working with them to ask the question, what decision will building this dashboard for you help you make once you're launched? So that simple shift has done two things. It's narrowed the scope of the analysis, and it makes the output immediately actionable, because if we don't know the decision, the data usually just creates more questions instead of answers. And if you think about the last analytics request your team made, did you frame it as data, or did you frame it as a decision? To operationalize this shift, we institutionalized measurement plans. So measurement became part of our product development lifecycle instead of something that we think about after launch. Before releasing a feature, product teams now define their success metrics, their instrumentation requirements, and how results will be interpreted. Traditionally, this is where our product managers really struggled when they had to figure out instrumentation, define trackable metrics, and ensure engineering was capturing the right events. Our product teams ended up partnering closely. Our product analytics team wound up partnering closely with product management and engineering to make sure that all of these things were implemented and thought through appropriately. And over time, this turned our measurement from an ad hoc activity into a repeatable system. So once our analytics really started working, we discovered something interesting, and scaling became a huge challenge for us. As product teams started seeing what was possible with the data, our data-driven insights exploded in terms of requests. They wanted more dashboards, they wanted deeper analysis, and they needed help interpreting results. So for us, this was a great problem to have. We proved ourselves and our worth, but our demand for insights grew faster than our capacity to deliver them. We started seeing things internally where product managers were reaching out constantly. Because the requests increased and instrumentation increased, our analysts, which we only have 3, by the way, for 50+ product managers, they started getting pulled into almost every single product conversation. So even though we've created a demand for insights, we didn't have enough leverage in the system to scale it. The second hidden bottleneck was instrumentation. As I mentioned before, product managers needed the most help instrumenting Pendo, defining measurable success metrics, and ensuring engineering was capturing the right events. And without that foundation, even the best analytics tools can't provide meaningful insights. So we realized something important. Good analytics doesn't start in dashboards, it starts with how our products are built. Once we started designing analytics systems instead of isolated reports, things started improving. Our decisions became faster, teams debated metrics less, and insights started reaching more of the organization. One of the most meaningful changes that we saw was speed. So we reduced our time to decision by roughly 50%, not by producing more reports, but by aligning teams around shared definitions and measurement plans. And this one was another huge one for us. Since we instrumented measurement planning institutionally, we went from essentially 0 product launches having measurement plans to about 40% of them having measurement plans, and that number continues to grow. A simple example shows the difference. Before measurement plans, our teams would launch a feature, open multiple dashboards, and spend weeks debating metrics. And after our measurement plans, success metrics were defined before the launch. Teams reviewed results quickly, and decisions that used to take weeks started happening in days. The good news is this approach doesn't require a large analytics team. Any product organization can start applying this mindset. So here's the question that I really encourage teams to ask. If analytics disappeared tomorrow, what decision would get harder for you to make? You should start designing your analytics around that decision and not around dashboards. The biggest lesson for us was the fact that analytics isn't reporting. It's actually decision infrastructure, and that doesn't emerge accidentally. You have to design for it because clarity scales and confusion multiplies. So to help teams apply this approach, I've created a free template for y'all, the decision-driven measurement brief. I should really think about renaming that because every time I cannot say it. But you can use it to launch a new feature, define your KPIs, or request analytics support, and your team can align on success metrics and measurement earlier in the product development process instead of at the end of your life cycle. Thank you for your time. If you guys want to connect afterwards, I'd love to hear about what you're doing with analytics and making product decisions.
Hi. Ooh, sorry, it's loud. I'm Kimberly Matthews. I'm from Ready Education. We are the company behind Campus Groups. It is a student engagement platform that is used by colleges and universities. It's kind of a white labeled, kind of B2B2C type of platform. And today I'm going to talk about the Pendo Data Sync solution. So how we used some of the behavioral data that Pendo was already collecting for us for our internal use of our doing BI across all of our clients, and we turned that into a revenue generating module that our clients are already buying. So I'm going to cover three things. First, kind of the product strategy around this module that we're calling data intelligence. The second is the role that Pendo Data Sync played in filling a critical gap in the kind of data that we wanted to surface for our clients. And then third, some lessons learned and kind of some takeaways. So quick background on me. I've been at Ready Education for 3.5 years. Before that, I worked within higher ed in both digital strategy and academic publishing, kind of e-learning. In my current role, I was the one that led the adoption and the governance of Pendo for our internal analytics, and we used the in-app guides mostly, and we did all of that in 2024. So we at Ready Education want to solve big problems, and there is no bigger problem in higher ed right now than the retention crisis. We know that 4 out of 10 students drop out of college, and of those, 25% of them cite feeling disengaged or disconnected, and addressing that is really at the heart of what our platform is designed to do. Essentially, all higher ed leaders agree that the analytics are an important tool for addressing this challenge. We know that the will is there, the data matters, but the kind of data that they need, especially the co-curricular engagement data, the kind of stuff that lives in platforms like ours, it can often be siloed or hard to access, or even just overlooked as a significant factor. So we built what we call a data intelligence module. It's an add-on to our core platform, and it pulls engagement data like event attendance, group memberships, community activity, communications, user attributes, even revenue that flows through the platform. Pulls that into a tenant-segmented data lake, and it surfaces it through 4 tools. The first are dashboards. Those are like visuals, interactive charts that you can use to spot trends quickly. We also have AI Insights, which is a natural language query layer on top of all that, so you can just ask a question, kind of have a conversation about your data. We have a data export API, and that's for bulk extraction, so you can ingest that data into other data lakes, maybe institutional data warehouses for more deeper correlation with other kinds of data. And then lastly, we have a report builder that lets you download kind of the data in custom CSV format. So the idea was pretty simple. Every campus has this data. They're generating it every day through our platform. We need to make it accessible. We need to make it useful, and we need to connect it to kind of that impact and those higher goals and some clear actions. These tools were built off aggregate platform data from our back end. We could tell you how many students attended an event. We could tell you how many joined a group, how many posts were made, emails were sent. These were counts, totals, kind of the volume of activity that was happening in the platform. What we couldn't tell you was what were users actively seeking out, what were they clicking on, what pages did they spend a lot of time on, how did they navigate. That behavioral layer is what we were missing, and that's where the Pendo data sync came in. It let us pipe that behavioral data that Pendo was already collecting, so all those features we had tagged, all the page views, the track events we'd set up, the navigation patterns, all of that was piped into our data lake alongside the aggregate data that we had from our back end. And that's really what took us from like, here are your numbers to here's what people are actually doing. And it's the combination, I think, of those two data types that gave our administrators like a full picture of everything that was happening in their platform. You know, what's working, what's kind of falling flat, what kind of users are thriving, and maybe who's silently falling through the cracks. Pendo data really helps our platform admins do a few things. So one is they can evolve their content strategy based on what's actually getting engagement, not what they assume is useful or hope is useful. Our platform is like a very configurable content management system in a way, so it relies on our platform admins to design it in an intuitive way, to populate it with really digestible content. And these are professionals who are very good at their jobs, but they don't necessarily have a background in UX design or marketing. And sometimes it can be hard to get into the mindset of your end user, especially when that user is 17 years old. So this data, revealing it to them, helped them kind of check their assumptions, pivot, do some testing about what was working to get students to use the kind of content they wanted them to find. It also helped them demonstrate growth in platform usage, which was really important when it comes to justifying budget. During those renewal times, they have to do their budgets every year. You want to show ROI, right? It helps them evaluate which features are most used, so they know the best channels to get important messages or content in front of different audiences. And lastly, it really just helped them understand kind of what types of users were active and engaged versus those that they were failing to reach for some reason. And that's where you could start to tie all of this back to those retention outcomes. So just zooming in a little bit, these are the kind of metrics we were showing, things like daily, weekly, and monthly active users. You could see which menu items are getting the most clicks because every school kind of designs their own menus. You can break that down by segments. So account type, class year, major, degree. These things didn't necessarily live in Pendo, but we could join them using those identifiers with the data that was in our back end. And then you could even filter like the entire dashboard by these attributes if you just want to focus in on one population at a time. So all of this, is Pendo data piped into our data lake, combined with those other data sets, and then surfaced through this open source dashboarding tool. And this is all intel that we were using previously for our own purposes, but now it is the product. And what's really exciting is we are doing what everyone's doing. You have a data lake, you want to put a chat agent on it. So we have hooked this up so that we can allow our admins to ask questions of their data. We can design all the pretty pie charts in the world, but we still aren't going to answer all the questions that they're going to want to ask. And we aren't going to be able to sit next to them and kind of walk them through it, try to make sense of what they're seeing, pull out those insights. And that's what an LLM on top of an analytics engine is really good at. So that's been really exciting to play with recently. And looking ahead, we plan to build on this. First, we are in a good position to leverage a vast amount of data across all of our clients. It's a good way to help the field kind of define what does engagement even mean. How do you measure it? What are the metrics you want to measure to show its impact? I was at a conference earlier this month, actually. It was like every other session seemed to be people grappling with this question. Our buyers in the student affairs division, primarily, they need to prove that the value of the work that they're doing on campus and get the budgets that they need to do the work that we know is impactful, but we want to make sure that leadership knows that. And Ready Education's in a good position to partner with some of those colleagues in higher ed to kind of do the correlation between engagement data and retention data, come up with some kind of engagement index that could be calculated from co-curricular participation, but also from the navigation patterns, the feature usage. All of that's part of the equation that we could be using to train a model or find ways to identify the disengaged students, the students that meet different profiles or might be at risk, so that the staff has the information they need to intervene in a targeted way before it's too late, before they just don't re-enroll. We could also proactively surface relevant insights within the context of the user flows in the platform itself. So say you're creating an event, it could prompt you with something like, it looks like you're scheduling a career fair for seniors. Historically, seniors are underrepresented at events that take place after 5 p.m. Attendance peaks at 3 p.m., something along those lines where you could actually prompt the administrators using the platform to make different decisions, and even agents that would take those actions on their behalf. I also want to talk about how we brought this, the go-to-market for this. One of our goals was to expand the conversation that sales was having. So, student activities offices are one of our primary buyers. They don't have big budgets. They can't just pull money when they want to add new capabilities like this. But when we positioned data intelligence as something valuable to presidents and CIOs and institutional research and assessment teams, that gave them an argument that they could bring to their leadership. It got them a seat at a bigger table with bigger budgets. We also rolled this out with a free trial, which meant we gave every client time-gated access to all the tools with their data. And that was interesting because it created a deeper interest, because they weren't just kind of watching a demo of a new feature, they were really evaluating their own story and kind of seeing it reflected back at them, and it was really sparking a lot of ideas and more questions and curiosity. And lastly, we moved really fast with this. We shipped a V1 with just like 40 charts. We didn't even have the AI piece fully baked yet, but because we had the infrastructure, we had the pipeline set up between Pendo and our other systems, we had the tooling, we could quickly spin up additional charts and data sets based on immediate feedback. So, users got to play with it, and so their feedback was even better than it had been when I was doing my original research, kind of asking theoretical questions. Now we were like in it, looking at their data and kind of prying into like, well, what else would you want to know? And then I could go back to my team. We could pre-aggregate something, we could create another chart, we could answer that question kind of in real time. So it created this very satisfying feedback loop that it just kept making. We had 3 more minor releases like back to back the next 2 weeks. A few challenges worth calling out. First, Pendo Data Sync gave us a huge volume of data, and we do serve institutions in 4 global regions. So we had to be really careful about building strict tenant segmentation. We didn't want any one account to see data from another account. We also had to take into account how data was moving within regions, just to make sure we didn't violate GDPR. And then we had to do a lot of work to optimize the transfer pipeline to avoid timeouts. There were some long days for the engineers as they tried to backfill that initial historical kind of data dump going back years. A lot of starting and stopping during that time. Secondly, we had to convince buyers to pay for their own data, which is really just about how you frame the value prop, because it's not that they're paying for access to their data, they're paying for the analytics layer. And now that we're rolling out this Gen AI component, which is part of the module for the same cost, unlimited use, it's really making that conversation a lot easier. And third, we're dealing with a moving target in Pendo more than ever. So multiple teams use Pendo for different reasons, product, of course, but client success, marketing, any of the changes that could be made to those track events or to how pages are tagged, we just want to make sure they don't have any downstream effects on the product that clients are actively using. So governance and style guides, conventions like that have become more important and more high stakes. I had to include some data because it's Pendomonium, so you got to have a slide on metrics. This is during our free trial. We saw some pretty good engagement. We had about 700 admins actively explore their dashboards, which does represent 67% of our client base. And 35% of those came back within 2 weeks and spent an average of 6 minutes on those pages. So I think that signals not just some curiosity, but actually active exploration of the feature. On the revenue side, we have 32 deals that are closed or at least further down the pipeline, and that's in the first month, which is really good for higher ed because our procurement cycles are just notoriously slow. And then I just wanted to end by talking about some lessons learned, some kind of takeaways. I was thinking of sharing. So one is that your product data can be a product. You know, that behavioral data that Pendo was collecting that we were all using to understand how our clients were using the platform, that was like raw material. We kind of thought of it as an ingredient that we could add, and it wasn't just some report that we download. Second, that free trials on real data convert. It was really fun to watch people play with this tooling. When admins see like their own data reflected back at them, they kind of have that aha moment. It really invites even more engagement with the feature. And then they missed it when the trial ended. So we got a lot of calls when we turned that off, because that was something they'd started to like check, as we all check our own Pendo dashboards. And third, expand the buyer, expand the budget. We're always looking to expand the budget. So that was a good way of leveling up some of the conversations we were having. And then fourth, the idea of shipping iteratively and kind of selling on the roadmap really came into play here, especially with the pace of technology, how quickly it's evolving. It's always been important to kind of get things out in front of people and get feedback and learn from it, but I feel like the pace of that is really ramped up. And that's something we were rolling with. We're actually using Amazon's BI platform for some of this, and they rebranded and reorganized that whole offering twice while we were in the middle of trying to build this. So we were just kind of trying to keep up and take advantage of everything new that was coming out, because tech moves so fast. So, yeah.
My name's Hannah, and as you can see from the slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own career journey and how Pendo helped accelerate it. I'm a senior manager of digital success at Okta, in case I didn't mention that. Some of you might be thinking, oh, I know Okta. For those of you who don't, at Okta, our mission is really simple. We want to free everyone to safely use any technology. We have about 20,000 customers globally, from the largest corporations in the world to the teeny tiniest startups. And while you might interact with Okta when you're clicking the Pendo tile every day in your Okta dashboard as a workforce user, we also, or maybe you're accessing your favorite workout app or bank application, our primary target audience when we think about Pendo is actually our IT admins and developers who are configuring the secure experiences that you all enjoy. So, for our customers, it's really hard to know what to prioritize first. Security is vast. Threats are evolving and ever-changing. At our team, I specifically lead our digital success team, our digital journeys team, which builds omni-channel digital programs to help scale both our humans and our smallest customers with Okta, get them to value faster so that they can expand and grow. At our Okta and Pendo challenge is really that every communication point we have with customers is really important. Every moment we ask for their attention, we want to make sure we're maximizing the value that they're getting out of it and that we get out of it, both digital and human first. And our use of Pendo, like I'm sure many of you can attest to, is really getting our team internally to use it most effectively for adoption and insights. As you can see here, we have over 900 Pendo users at Okta, and 13 installed across 13 applications. So we not only have it installed in our core product, but also our learning platform, our customer success hub, our help center, et cetera. This is actually really important because it allows us to walk through customer journeys in both a support and customer success motion, as well as a learning and the product itself. At Okta, we've created nearly 800 guides, which is a dizzying amount. So we've done our fair share of governance and guide Center of Excellence as well. From a show of hands, and yes, I'm going to ask you for some participation here. How many of you feel like you do amazing work in Pendo, but your executives have no clue how it impacts the bottom line? Okay, I see a few hands. All right, leave your hand raised or raise your hand if you would like a promotion. Okay, if you raised your hand, I can relate, and that's what I'm here to tell you about. In the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to walk you through my presentation, which really outlines how Pendo became my secret weapon for 2 promotions in 3 years. All right, What is a promotion-ready recipe? It's really a fun way that I try to wrap my talk into 3 core themes. 1, you need to demonstrate that you have vision. Can you have a data-backed strategy, and can you execute against that vision? Next, you need to prove your value. So how does your vision that you executed lead to better customer and business outcomes? And then finally, scale. We're all being asked to do more with less. How are you multiplying your impact? How are you doing more with less? And I will say this is particularly important when you want to make the leap from an IC to a people leader, which I myself did, so I have a bit of an experience here. I want to walk you through some tangible takeaways, so let's get started. Every vision starts with asking and answering important questions. This is thankfully something that Pendo is really, really good at. Pendo's reports and dashboards help you ask questions about adoption. You've heard a lot of folks today talk about adoption gaps. The AI helps you find unobvious friction points, things that you ought to be optimizing for first. And I personally think that segments are the bread and butter of any good strategy. Your segments allow you to answer the who and the what and the why it matters question more than I think any other Pendo capability. So shout out to segments. All right, how do you ask and answer some really powerful questions? I'm going to walk you through 3 question areas. The first one is, where are our practitioners spending their time? We had this hypothesis when we were building adoption programs a few years back that all our admins did was go to the main admin dashboard and then quickly click away. And what this ultimately caused us to do was build many guides, not quite 800, but many guides that originate on this same core page. The problem is, our admins aren't just spending time on that first admin page. They spend more time and more deep time on other parts of the application. And not only that, but this hypothesis led us to build over 50% of our guides on this one page, which not only is a very confusing and overwhelming experience, we were serving 10 or more guides to the same admin monthly, which is not a great experience. And so that was one insight. Next, where are admins getting stuck and how can we unblock them? At Okta, when an IT admin creates a policy, it's an incredibly powerful moment. It drives those secure identity experiences, and it's core to that first time to value. We found that it takes customers, on average, 10 days to actually configure a policy. Maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but certainly a friction point that we felt like we could have an impact on. And finally, how does segment or use case change a customer's outcome or goal? This is one that we were really delighted by. So we found we actually collect our customers' business objectives, both in a pre-sales and a post-sales motion, to make sure that we can speak to what are you trying to get out of Okta, and then build experiences around that. We saw there's a strong correlation between the business outcomes selected and your persona. So kudos to us. IT admins evidently are most concerned about efficiencies. They want y'all to submit less help desk tickets. CISOs and CIOs are really concerned with mitigating threats and risks, things that would be detrimental to their business. And our developers are looking for seamless end user experiences. And once more, we know when a customer gives us our business objective and we walk them through a digital experience, based on that business objective, that they're more likely to adopt. So this was a real proof point in our strategies right on here. So we've got a vision, now we need to execute. For us, our admins don't just live in app, and it isn't just about guides. I would urge you all to think broader and bigger. So we built a fully end-to-end personalized journey, and we took the insights gathered from Pendo to help build, instead of a one-size-fits-all journey, one that speaks to the customer's business use case. Let me tell you a little bit about how that might work. You become a new Okta admin or a new Okta customer. We surface a personalized video which tells you what you've purchased, and based on your business objective, what your next best action is to do, and why you ought to do it. That's an important component here. You're guided in application to an embedded guide that surfaces relevant learning materials that we know you haven't taken and that you have access to based on your subscription. We serve up through the Resource Center what you ought to do next based on what you've adopted and what you've purchased. You get the idea. And it all seamlessly integrates from email, our Customer Success Hub, and our in-app, so that we're not telling you one thing to do in your Customer Success Hub, and then you're getting another set of directions in application. This all becomes much easier to translate at the time of renewal, and our customers are so pleased to see how well they're adopting Okta. We display their data based on their use case back to the customer when you have a customer success manager, and we know that this experience leads to better growth and outcomes for our customers. All right. You've got your vision, you've executed this amazing strategy. How do you translate that into value? We here are all used to the vanity metrics, the ones that make us feel warm and fuzzy inside. Guide views, guide click-through rates, and while these are important measures of effectiveness of your programs, your executives don't care. They just don't. They don't help you translate that value into business impact. The reality is they care about retention, revenue, and time to value. If you can't translate Pendo into dollars, you are essentially a tactical operator and not a strategic leader. And in order to get a promotion, I bet you've guessed, you need to show your strategy side. All right, so how do you take Pendo metrics and translate them into more valuable metrics? How do you take it from tactical to strategic? I'm going to walk you through 4 examples. 1, we serve our customers with over 2 million guide views. 2 million guide views. Ooh, let me not misquote myself there. Guide views, that's great. Very passive. It can encourage you to do more of more, not better, which ultimately isn't a great customer experience. Instead, my digital team looks at how many customers are we engaging and having a positive engagement with month over month, quarter over quarter. This allows us to, at least in the beginning, set expectations of how our digital first motion is actually touching and reaching our customers. And it's important to the business. There is sometimes an opinion that digital only serves the smallest customers, and we aim to change that opinion, and I think we effectively did so, that digital also impacts our largest customers. So when you're talking about customer engagement, you can use the percentage of account. We've got all of this in Pendo. Percent of an account to actually look at that. This is also a great baseline if you're still building out your digital journeys to understand, just pulse. How many customers are we having a positive interaction with? Next, click-through rate. Again, not so great. An important measure when you're thinking about the effectiveness of your guides, but I would encourage you to think about ARR influenced. We know when our customers are engaged, they are 1.5 times more likely to have a positive adoption outcome. That likelihood actually translates into ARR, and if we know those customers that are engaged, you can use segments, and if you, like us, are bringing in customer data points from a Salesforce or another CRM, you can do segmentation to actually show you how many of those deeply engaged customers and what is their ARR. So it's probably more or less the same metric, but just a different framing. Next is guide completion rate, another great metric. Here you can see we had a 69% percentage point guide completion rate increase when we compared and A/B tested those automatically triggered guides to those surfaced via the Resource Center. It was a big win for us. Guide completion rate means that your customers are actually taking action and moving towards an outcome. But again, our executives don't care about guide completion rate. What they do care about is faster time to value. How are we accelerating the process of adoption so that they can get to that first authentication faster? There are great widgets also in dashboards that show you time to value. I believe it's even called the time to value widget. You can actually use that widget with a segment based on guide views, not guide views, whatever you're looking at, to compare, did this actually improve time to value for a core feature? Insider hint. And finally, average feature adoption. So I hope all of you are giving each guide a goal. This is really important. I think this is sets the tone for what your guides are doing. So what? How do you answer the so what of the 50% adoption? For us, we have an amazing person on my team, Kelly, who's actually in the crowd, who you should pick the brain of after this talk, who built out this whole strategy of driving deeper phishing-resistant authentication within our customer base. We know that customers that are using our FastPass phishing-resistant authentication are more likely to stay with Okta. It's a seamless, phishing-resistant, very secure method of accessing your applications, and customers love it, and they're more likely to stay if they use it. By influencing faster time to adoption and increasing adoption of this feature, we could point to the churn dollars we saved. I can't tell you the exact number, but it was a really nice number that our executives definitely did care about. All right, and the final piece of my promotion-ready recipe is scale. I think about this in 3 parts. The first is admittedly the least sexy. It is, how do you scale your use of Pendo? This is all about standardization. Building that center of excellence, building form intake, building briefs, building things that are repeatable and help you multiply. I think that the standardization is also really important when we get to my third point, which is definitely much more sexy, which is AI. So in the scaling, you need to be consistent. The next is taking your insights beyond your brain. You heard my 2 co-presenters talk about this as well. Being able to serve up insights in a dashboard allows you to answer your boss's question of like, how's that thing doing? Or what's that outcome of XYZ with a link to a dashboard versus having to dig for data that may or may not be useful, and maybe they're not in the weeds of Pendo themselves. Also, pro tip, you can add in comments and headlines to help explain the dashboard. I've also found not every executive has the same level of data fluency, so being able to put a description and kind of guide them through how to use and interpret the dashboard is a really powerful thing as well. They're also incredibly easy to spin up, and they're pretty fun too. The third is, of course, AI and efficiency. So not only how are you using AI within Pendo and all the wonderful things that Tog talked about this morning, but how are you actually using it across channels and to optimize? If you'll remember, I mentioned that my team doesn't just build in-app guidance, so we needed a way to look across all our digital programs, those that reside in Pendo, those that reside in our email platform and elsewhere, to identify gaps and opportunities. That standardization that I mentioned in the first step here was pivotal. We needed our guide briefs to be easy to crawl so that our guide optimizer, built by my team, which I'm super proud of, can actually make recommendations that are based in fact and that they are a little bit faster, helping optimize the Gemini gem that she built. We have hundreds of key moments that are incorporated into this gem with a red, yellow, green recommendation system of strength of recommendation, data availability, et cetera. And it's been a very powerful tool for us to iterate faster. It also helps us find gaps where we may not have a guide to support or we may not need to introduce an email trigger. You get the idea. This has really been a powerful tool for us, and we found that over 75% of the recommendations that this gem optimizer brings forward are actually those that we're kind of excited about and able to action on, which is pretty good. And then next, personalization. So Kelly, who I mentioned in the crowd, also built this awesome notebook LM that speaks to our brand tone and voice and deeply understands the use cases of our IT admins and security personas and allows us to take those optimization recommendations and translate them into email and in-app copy that seamlessly integrates. So really exciting examples of how we're using AI at Okta as well. All right, now that you have my recipe, I want to give you my blueprint, which was my promise to you. Don't just use Pendo to build guides and dashboards, use it to build your career. No matter where you are in your journey, Pendo can truly help. My key takeaways are, practically, You can use this QR code. Yes, thank you. I saw some of you taking pictures. And fill out the form, and I will send you my promotion-ready recipe. So the framework for questions and answers, as well as the guide templates, and some really low-hanging fruit AI use cases that we've been doing. And then our Center of Excellence. I will also send you if you're a Smartsheet user, our guide request process, so that you can basically take everything that we've built over the past few years and implement it at your company, or find ways that you might be inspired. So thank you so much for the time. And as I mentioned, I said her name about 1,000 times, but I'm so proud of her. As a leader now, I have the joy and the pleasure of watching those on my team grow in their career as well. And so you have Kelly in the crowd. Be sure to find her. Kelly, wave. She's the real pro and the mastermind behind a lot of what I got to speak about today. So thank you all, and have a great Pendomonium.